The sea does not keep secrets forever. For nearly half a century, it held the story of Air India Flight 171 close. On New Year's Day, 1978, a Boeing 747, the Emperor Ashoka, lifted off from Bombay. Just 101 seconds after takeoff, it vanished. No distress call, no warning, only silence and a distant impact. The wreckage was found a few kilometers from the coast, a catastrophic end to a flight that had barely begun. For families and investigators, the questions began immediately. How could this happen to a modern aircraft with a veteran crew? The aircraft banked sharply left, lost altitude and plunged into the ocean. The initial search yielded fragments and the tragic recovery of all 213 souls on board, but the core of the mystery, the why, remained elusive, buried in the mangled metal and deep waters. The official investigation offered a conclusion, but it never truly settled the matter. The crash became a ghost story in aviation, a cautionary tale with an incomplete moral. The official report pointed to pilot error, but the evidence felt thin, leaving room for doubt and theories. Was it mechanical failure, human error, or something more sinister? The lack of a definitive answer allowed the tragedy to fester, becoming a wound in India's national consciousness. Years turned into decades, and the world moved on, but the sea is patient. The unanswered questions about that January night did not disappear. They were merely waiting for new tools, new perspectives, and a new generation willing to challenge the ghosts of the past. What really happened in the cockpit of Flight 171 during those final fatal 101 seconds? Air India Flight 171 was a scheduled passenger service from Bombay to Dubai, flown by a Boeing 747 named Emperor Ashoka. Captain Madan Lal Kukar, a seasoned pilot, commanded the flight with First Officer Indu Vimani and Flight Engineer Alfredo Faria. The flight was full, 190 passengers, 23 crew, embarking on what should have been an uneventful journey. Weather was clear, visibility good, and the aircraft had no known technical issues. Takeoff from Santa Cruz Airport was normal, the 747 climbing as planned over the Bandra coast. For the first minute, everything was routine. Then, the aircraft began a slow, subtle bank to the left. The black boxes were recovered, showing the aircraft reached about 1,000 feet before the left bank steepened. The cockpit voice recorder captured the captain noting his attitude director indicator, ADI, had toppled, giving false information. The final report concluded pilot error. The captain, misled by his instruments, flew a perfectly good airplane into the sea. It was deemed a classic case of spatial disorientation. The official conclusion of pilot error was neat, but for many, it felt incomplete. Captain Kukar was highly experienced. Why would he trust a single failed instrument over others? The cockpit of a 747 is built on redundancy, with multiple systems and crew. The idea that all three would fixate on one failed instrument seemed improbable. Doubt gave rise to darker theories. Whispers of sabotage in a tense political climate. Some believed a bomb had been placed on board, pointing to the speed of the event. Investigators searched for evidence of an explosion, but found none. The lack of proof didn't kill the theory, it simply moved it into the realm of conspiracy. The official report itself contained dissent. J.R.D. Tata, Air India's founder, believed mechanical failure hadn't been fully explored. His dissent lent credibility to the idea that the full story hadn't been told. The crash remained suspended between two narratives, tragic human error or a sinister act. The truth stayed just out of reach, fueling speculation for decades. For the families, the lack of closure was a wound that never healed. The mystery endured, waiting for a new explanation. For over 40 years, the case of Flight 171 lay dormant. The official report was filed away, the wreckage examined and disposed of. Aviation moved on, implementing new protocols and better instruments. The Emperor Ashoka became a historical footnote, a case study in pilot training. For families, the silence was heavy, filled with unanswered questions. In 1978, investigators worked with limited tools, flight recorders, wreckage, crew records. Their conclusion was reasonable for the time, but incomplete. The silence was finally broken not by new evidence, but by the march of science. A new generation of scientists began to re-examine the accident, armed with powerful computers and a deeper understanding of atmospheric phenomena. The new investigation began not at a crash site, but in a laboratory. Atmospheric scientists and aerospace engineers built a digital twin of that New Year's night. They gathered weather reports, flight data, aircraft specs, and coastline topography. Their goal: recreate the flight of the Emperor Ashoka second by second in a virtual environment. Initial simulations using standard atmospheric models failed to reproduce the accident. Even with instrument failure, it was hard to make a seasoned crew lose control so quickly. The missing piece emerged when they modeled detailed coastal atmospheric phenomena. The land cooled after sunset, and the warmer Arabian Sea created a complex boundary layer of air. The team hypothesized that as Flight 171 climbed out over the sea, it flew through a sharp, invisible gradient. When they programmed this into their simulation, they saw something remarkable. The breakthrough lay in a phenomenon called density shear. On that night, cooler, denser air over land met warmer, lighter air over the sea, creating an invisible boundary. As Flight 171 climbed, its left wing entered the less dense air first, causing an aerodynamic imbalance. The left wing generated less lift, and the left engines produced slightly less thrust. The result, a subtle but persistent rolling and yawing moment to the left. This atmospheric effect coincided with the captain's instrument malfunction. The ADI on Captain Kukar's side failed, showing a wings-level attitude while the aircraft was already in a left bank. The captain felt a turn, but his instrument said otherwise, a profound sensory conflict. The first officer's ADI was working, showing the true left bank, but the warning was not processed in time. The cockpit voice recorder captured the confusion. "What's happening? We're turning!" In those critical seconds, the bank steepened until it became unrecoverable. The atmosphere itself had nudged the plane into disaster. The tragedy was set in motion by forces no one in the cockpit could see. The real cause of the crash was a catastrophic cascade of events, a perfect storm of mechanical malfunction, human factors, and an unrecognized environmental phenomenon. The density shear was the trigger, nudging the 747 into its initial bank. Without it, the instrument failure alone might not have been fatal. The crew would have had more time to diagnose and recover, but the density shear created a real turn, masked by the faulty ADI, leading to cockpit confusion. Captain Kukar was not simply disoriented, he was misled by a confluence of treacherous circumstances. The findings exonerate him from sole blame, recasting him as a professional caught in an impossible scenario. The tragedy highlights the importance of crew resource management. Modern training now empowers co-pilots to be more assertive. Ultimately, the truth was not sabotage or incompetence, but a story of physics and physiology. The new findings provide a more complete, compassionate understanding of the tragedy. The narrative shifts from pilot error to a perfect storm of technical factors and environmental factors. The revelation about atmospheric conditions in the Flight 171 crash has profound implications for aviation safety. It forces us to see mechanical failures, human failures, and environmental failures as interconnected. The environmental factor of density shear was the first invisible link in the chain. The lesson now is about the limitations of trusting instruments when reality is more complex. Modern cockpits with multiple independent sensors make cross-checking easier, partly thanks to lessons from tragedies like this. Investigators now model micro-weather phenomena, turning invisible factors into tangible data. Weather radar has improved, but detecting clear air density shear remains a challenge. For families, this discovery offers closure, lifting the burden of blame. The story of Flight 171 is now a lesson in the complex, sometimes dangerous physics of flight. The final chapter of Flight 171 is a testament to the relentless pursuit of knowledge. The sea gave up the wreckage, but it took modern science to reveal the truth. The ghost on the water was the invisible interaction between machine, man, and environment. The data from the simulations now trains pilots to handle subtle but dangerous atmospheric conditions. The research informs aircraft design, pushing for smarter flight control systems. The impact extends beyond this accident, encouraging re-examination of other ambiguous cases. The story ends not with drama, but with the quiet work of scientists and the logic of physics. The truth was not buried in the wreckage, but waiting in the invisible currents of the air.